It was a dark and stormy night. I was home alone, as I often am these days. Ever since my roommate moved out last month, the creaks and groans of this old house seem louder at night. I tried to distract myself by watching TV, but the storm was messing with the satellite signal. With nothing but static on every channel, I resigned myself to an early bedtime. As I lay in bed reading, the wind howled outside my window. The branches of the old oak tree scratched against the glass like skeletal fingers. I must have dozed off at some point, because I woke up to a loud thump from downstairs. I bolted upright, my heart pounding. Had I imagined it? I listened intently, but heard nothing except the storm raging outside. Just to be safe, I grabbed the baseball bat that I keep by my bed and slowly crept downstairs. The living room was dark and still. I turned on a lamp, illuminating the familiar furniture. Everything looked normal. I chuckled to myself, feeling silly about overreacting to a harmless noise. I headed to the kitchen for a glass of water. That's when I saw it. The back door was wide open, rain blowing in and pooling on the floor. I froze, gripping the bat tightly. I was certain I had locked that door before going to bed. Taking a deep breath, I tiptoed over and shut it. Just the wind, I told myself. Or maybe I had been sleepwalking earlier and forgot to lock up. Still, I couldn't shake the ominous feeling that had settled over me. As I turned from the door, I noticed dirty footprints on the kitchen floor. The mud-caked prints led from the door across the room, then disappeared down the hallway that led to my bedroom. A chill ran down my spine. Someone else was in the house. I considered fleeing out the front door into the stormy night, but that would mean turning my back on the intruder. Gripping the bat, I followed the footprints down the dark hall, my pulse racing. I paused outside my bedroom door, mustering my courage. Taking a deep breath, I burst into the room, ready to strike. My bedroom was empty. The footprints continued to the closet door, which was now inexplicably closed. I inched toward it, afraid of what I might find inside. Throwing open the door, I flicked on the light. Nothing, just my ordinary clothes hanging undisturbed. Was I losing my mind? I decided to search the whole house to reassure myself it was empty. I checked every closet, under every bed, my nerves completely frayed. Finding nothing, I started to feel ridiculous. There had to be some logical explanation. Returning to the kitchen, I saw that the back door was once again wide open. The wind had simply blown it open, I told myself firmly. I just needed some sleep. I locked the door, triple, checking it. Exhausted, I trudged back to bed. But I couldn't sleep. The wind continued to howl outside, tree branches scraping the glass. It was well past midnight when I heard a different sound, a loud thump coming from the hallway. My eyes shot open, my heart in my throat. Not again. I sat up slowly in bed. Had I heard something moving down the hall, or was it just the storm playing tricks on my weary mind? I listened intently, hugging my knees to my chest. Suddenly, my bedroom doorknob began to rattle violently. I gasped, frozen in fear. This was no figment of my imagination. Someone was twisting and pulling at the doorknob forcefully. Terror seized me as I realized I had no escape route. My bedroom was on the second floor with only a tiny window, unsuitable for climbing out. I was trapped. The rattling stopped abruptly. My entire body trembled, my mind racing frantically to think of some way out of this nightmare. Gripping the bat with white knuckles, I waited for the intruder to break down the door and attack. After an agonizing few minutes of silence, I heard the unmistakable creak of footsteps creeping slowly down the hall toward my room. Each deliberate footfall sounded like the toll of a death knell. The footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom door. I could hear breathing on the other side of the door. Suddenly, a man's voice called out, "Are you ready to die tonight?" He laughed, a cold, mirthless sound that froze my blood. Summoning my courage, I shouted back, "I'm calling the police," but my trembling voice betrayed my terror. The man just laughed again before resuming his monotonous pacing outside my door. "No one is coming to save you," he taunted. "You're all alone here." He was right. No one even knew I was in danger. I mentally prepared for the violent struggle ahead, determined not to go down without a fight. After what felt like an eternity, the doorknob began to jiggle again. He was coming in. With a crash, the door burst open, splintered from the force of his kicks. A masked man lurched into the room, heading straight for me. With a scream of primal desperation, I leap off the bed and swung at his head with the bat. He dodged it easily and wrenched the bat from my hands, tossing it away. I ran for the door, but he grabbed me and threw me down onto the floor. He brandished a wicked hunting knife, grinning down at me like a deranged hyena. Please, I sobbed. "Just take what you want and leave. Please don't hurt me." He snickered. "It's too late for begging. You had your chance." He leaned down and held the knife to my throat. I whimpered, squeezing my eyes shut in anticipation of the fatal slash. But suddenly, I heard shouts and heavy footfalls on the stairs. Blinding light flooded the room as multiple flashlights focused on the intruder. He froze. "Put down the weapon," ordered a stern voice. I opened my eyes to see uniformed police officers rushing into the bedroom, guns aimed at the masked man. He dropped the knife in stunned surrender. The police cuffed him and dragged him downstairs. A kind officer helped me to my feet, checking me for injuries. Still in shock, I asked how they had known to come. One of my concerned neighbors had called 911 after hearing frightening noises from my house, he explained. I nearly fainted in relief. As the police led the handcuffed killer away, I overheard one officer remark to another, "It's a good thing we got here when we did." A few minutes later, and she would have been dead for sure. A chill went through me at his words. My would-be murderer was a deranged serial killer who had been terrorizing our town, though I didn't learn that until later. All I could focus on that night was how close I had come to becoming another of his victims. I vividly remember every chilling detail of that harrowing night when I found myself home alone with a killer. It was a dark and stormy night. I was home alone as my parents were out of town for the weekend. The wind was howling something fierce, making the old house creak and moan. I tried to distract myself by watching TV, but I couldn't focus with the racket outside. Click. I turned off the TV, leaving me in silence except for the storm raging outside. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang coming from the kitchen. I froze. What was that? I waited a few minutes, but didn't hear anything else. Probably just the wind, I told myself. I got up to get a snack from the kitchen. As I entered, the back door was wide open, swinging back and forth in the wind. That must have been the bang I heard. I shut and locked the door, heart pounding. I scolded myself for being so jittery. As I turned back toward the fridge, a floorboard creaked behind me. I whipped around. Nothing. You're losing it, I thought, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that I was being watched. I quickly grabbed an apple and hurried back to the living room, making sure to turn on every light. Settling back onto the couch, I tried to take deep breaths to calm my nerves. Suddenly, the power went out, plunging me into darkness. Okay, no need to panic. Probably just a downed power line from the storm. I fumbled for my phone and turned on the flashlight. Sweeping it around the room, the light glinted off something by the hallway. A knife. A huge, bloody knife was laying on the floor. My heart leapt into my throat. Someone was in the house with me. I had to get out of there. Quietly, I crept toward the front door. I paused as I passed by the stairs. Was that footsteps I heard, or just my imagination playing tricks? I decided I couldn't risk it and dashed for the front door. Just as I got it open, an arm reached around and slammed it shut again. I spun around and came face to face with a man in a grotesque mask, holding the bloody knife. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. He raised a finger to the mask, as if to tell me to be quiet. Then he gestured upstairs. My blood ran cold. Had he already killed my whole family? Terrified tears streamed down my face as he forced me upstairs. At the top of the landing, I saw my parents and sisters lined up, tied together and gagged. They were still alive. Without thinking, I lunged toward the man, kicking and punching violently. As I struggled for breath, he leaned down and whispered in my ear, "It's too late for them, but you still have a chance. Do exactly as I say, and you might just make it through this night alive." He pulled me up and forced me to look into his cold, dead eyes. "It's just you and me now. Let the games begin." It was a dark and stormy night. I was home alone as my parents were out of town for the weekend. The wind was howling and the rain was coming down in sheets. I was sitting in the living room, watching TV and trying to distract myself from the creepy sounds of the old house settling. Around 10 p.m., the power went out. Great. Now I was alone in the pitch black. I fumbled to light some candles so I could see. As I was lighting the last candle, I heard a loud crash come from upstairs. I froze. What was that? I grabbed the candle holder and slowly started climbing the stairs. My heart was pounding. I crept down the dark hallway, candle extended in front of me. I pushed open the door to my bedroom and peered inside. A tree branch had broken through the window, shattering glass all over my bed. I let out a sigh of relief. Just a stupid tree. As I turned to head back downstairs, I heard a floorboard creak behind me. I whipped around, candle flickering. No one was there. "You're losing it," I told myself. I hurried back downstairs, looking over my shoulder the whole way. I settled onto the couch, trying to calm my nerves. The wind continued to howl outside, making strange whispers and moans. Suddenly, the candle flickered out, plunging me into darkness once again. Before I could relight it, I heard floorboards creaking directly above me. Someone was walking around upstairs, right above my head. Oh God, I sat paralyzed in fear, afraid to even breathe. The footsteps got closer and closer to the stairs. I scrambled off the couch and hid behind the armchair, watching the doorway. The footsteps slowly made their way down the stairs in the darkness. I couldn't see anyone, but I could feel their presence. A dark figure paused at the bottom of the stairs, listening. My heart was hammering so loud I was afraid they would hear it. After what felt like an eternity, the figure started walking through the living room, mere feet from where I was hiding. I tried not to breathe, praying they wouldn't see me. Suddenly, they stopped directly in front of my hiding spot. I could see the outline of a large figure towering over me, holding something shiny in their hand. A knife. Before I could react, they leapt towards me, grabbing me by the throat and pushing me to the ground. I struggled with all my might, kicking and clawing at my attacker. They were so strong, pinning me down with their powerful arms. I managed to break free for just a second and let out a blood-curdling scream before they clamped a hand over my mouth. "Shh," they whispered menacingly. "It will all be over soon." I thrashed violently, but I was no match for them. They raised the knife high above me, the moonlight gleaming off the sharp blade. As they swung it down towards my chest, I squeezed my eyes shut and screamed. Suddenly, the weight was lifted off me. I opened my eyes tentatively to see my dad wrestling the attacker to the ground. He had come home early and heard my scream. "Go call the police," he yelled at me. Hands shaking, I scrambled for the phone and dialed 911. Within minutes, police officers arrived and apprehended the attacker. Apparently, he was a serial killer who had been terrorizing our town for months. We later learned that the killer had been stalking me for weeks. He knew I would be home alone that night and had broken in planning to murder me. If my dad hadn't shown up when he did, I surely would have been killed. For months afterwards, I couldn't sleep alone, terrified that the killer would come back to finish me off. I will never forget that night and the true horror I experienced coming face to face with a killer in my own home. Going forward, I'll never take my safety for granted again. It was a typical Friday night, and I was home alone, as I often was these days. Ever since the divorce, the house felt too big and too quiet when my kids were with their dad for the weekend. I tried to fill the empty rooms with TV sounds, music, anything to make the place feel less lonely. I heated up a frozen dinner and settled on the couch to watch some mindless reality show. As the laughter from the studio audience filtered out of the speakers, I glanced around the living room. The sun had just set, and shadows were creeping across the walls. I got up to turn on a lamp, wanting to push the darkness back into the corners. My phone rang and I jumped. I laughed at myself for being so jittery as I saw it was just my sister calling. We chatted about her kids and her new job for a while. After we hung up, I tried to get back into the show, but I couldn't concentrate. I kept thinking I heard noises. The wind, the house settling. I told myself to stop scaring myself for no reason. I decided to head upstairs and just call it an early night. I went around turning off all the lights except the front hall light, which I always left on when I was home alone. The bedroom was chilly, so I crawled under the covers, still wearing my sweater. I picked up the book I was reading, but kept nodding off after only a few pages. I startle awake and look around the dark room in confusion. What woke me up? I listened closely, but the house was silent. Too silent. I slowly realized that the white noise of the TV was gone. The power must have gone out. I look at the clock. 2:37 a.m. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling creeping through my body. It was just a power outage. Nothing sinister about that. But something felt off. I crept out of bed and padded barefoot across the room in the pitch blackness. The moonlight coming through the window allowed me to make my way to the bedroom door without bumping into anything. I opened it slowly, cringing as it squeaked on its hinges, the sound sharp and unnatural. The hallway was swathed in inky shadows. I stared hard into that blackness, my heart thudding. Was someone there, watching me, waiting for me? Don't freak yourself out, I told myself, but I couldn't deny the prickly feeling on the back of my neck. Someone was in the house with me. I thought about grabbing a weapon, but decided against it. If someone was lurking around, I didn't want to provoke them. Better to just slip outside and call for help. I crept down the stairs, testing each step before putting my weight down, avoiding the creaky spots. I made it to the front door and slowly unlocked it, holding my breath. I turned the knob painstakingly slowly so the latch wouldn't click too loudly in the silent house. The door was heavy, and I had to use my weight to edge it open bit by bit. A floorboard creaked behind me, and I spun around. The hulking silhouette of a man filled the hallway, the faint light from the windows glinting off something metallic in his hand. A scream tore from my throat, and I stumbled out onto the front step, scrambling to get away from that menacing shadow. Rough hands grabbed me, pulling me back into the house. I kicked and scratched like a wild animal, but he was so much stronger. He, whoever he was, dragged me through the house. I struggled to get free, but his grip was like iron. We went into the kitchen and he forced me into a chair at the table. My head spun with confusion and terror as he efficiently bound my wrists and ankles to the chair with rope he must have brought. Duct tape sealed my mouth so I could only make muffled cries. He leaned over me, his face so close I could smell his sour breath. Scream all you want. No one can hear you. We're going to have some fun, you and I. His voice was chillingly calm, like we were discussing something as mundane as the weather, rather than him holding me hostage in my own home. He didn't seem worried about the neighbors hearing my scream earlier. The cold implication of his words seeped into my brain. We were far enough from anyone else that my cries would go unnoticed. He left the room for a minute and returned, dragging my kitchen knife block. My eyes widened in terror as he selected a long, serrated blade, whistling a cheerful tune under his breath. He seemed to be enjoying himself. "Here we go," he whispered, pressing the icy steel gently against my cheek. I bucked wildly in the chair, yelling behind the gag. "Pshaw," he hissed. "You'll ruin the fun if you struggle. Now, let's see how long it takes to make you scream." The knife sliced shallowly into my skin, just deep enough to draw blood. He watched my face intently as he slowly cut along my jaw, my chin, my neck. I whimpered and choked back sobs, not wanting to give him the satisfaction of my screams. "Come on, that had to hurt," he muttered, clearly annoyed by my silence. He stabbed the knife into my shoulder and I couldn't hold back a throttled shriek. "There we go, that's more like it," he said with a smile. He left the knife protruding grotesquely from my shoulder and selected a small paring knife from the block. "Let's try somewhere a bit more sensitive." He trailed the blade over my collarbone teasingly before stabbing it into the soft flesh just above my left breast. My screams echoed through the house. "Please stop, please. I'll do anything you want," I tried to beg through the gag, not caring about pride anymore. I just wanted the pain to end, but he just smiled wider as he made more shallow cuts along my stomach and thighs. "That's right, beg for mercy, but I'm not done playing with you yet." He grabbed pliers from a drawer and loomed over me. I thrashed my head back and forth in wordless panic. He chuckled. "You're only making this more fun. Now open wide." Suddenly he stopped, staring past me with a puzzled expression. Before I could react, his body jerked and he let out a guttural groan. He collapsed to the ground, revealing my daughter standing behind him, holding a heavy cast iron pan. She must have snuck in the back door when she heard my screams. She dropped the pan with a clang and rushed to my side. I ripped the tape off my mouth with a cry of pain and then pulled her into a fierce hug, both of us sobbing. The man lay motionless in a spreading pool of blood. "You saved my life," I told her. "I love you so much." She called 911 while I stumbled to the laundry room to grab towels to press against my wounds. I knew we had a long road ahead to heal from this traumatic night, but at least we had each other. My wonderful, brilliant, courageous girl who was my hero. As the police sirens wailed in the distance, I clung to her. My daughter, my protector. No matter what happened, we would get through this together.